In the year we were so poor we had to eat chaff and swallow vegetables, two important figures from the capital came to the orphanage. After finding the lost daughter of the general's mansion, they generously donated 100 taels of gold and gave pastries to every child. As I reached out to take it, bullet comments scrolled before my eyes. Sister, quickly take out the jade pendant you wear close to your body, they're here for you. As long as you expose that fake young lady who's trying to take over your role, you'll have a home. They say the general is my elder brother, and the prime minister is my fiancé, but I just keep nibbling on the pastries, burying my head even lower, because I know the two people in front of me are here for the fake daughter. Whether I take the jade pendant or not, they won't even glance at me. Watching the rapidly scrolling bullet comments before me, I remained silent. I could only reach for the pastry with my hands, frozen and tinged with purple, but the moment my fingertips grasped the corner of the oiled paper, the silk-robed chancellor across from me suddenly froze. When his gaze fell upon the red, swollen, and cracked chilblains on the back of my hand, his pupils contracted slightly, and a flicker of emotion stirred in his eyes. His thin lips moved slightly as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he did not speak. The man beside me immediately shoved the pastry into my palm, his voice as cold as ice. He didn't even glance at me. Next, looking at the gentle pastry in my hand, my eyes suddenly ached with a sharp sting. I should have known all along that they wouldn't acknowledge me, but when the truth was right in front of me, my heart felt as if it had been plunged into ice water, chilling me to the bone and making my whole body tremble. And when they saw us standing face to face, the live comments went wild. The scrolling text further obscured the face of the person in front of me, but I didn't follow the live comments and expose Jiu Jiao. Instead, I just bit down hard on the pastry and buried my head even lower. It's just that when the stray hairs in front of my forehead covered the corners of my eyes, the overly sweet red bean paste made my throat feel tight. Sweetie, hurry up and call for someone. That's your brother. The other one is your future husband. Quickly expose Jiu Jiao. The fake heiress. Otherwise, once the prime minister marries her a month from now, it will be too late. They all tried to dissuade me with their words, but I quietly tightened my grip on the jade pendant at my chest, paying them no mind. But as the icy sensation spread from my fingertips through my entire body, I suddenly felt a pang of sorrow. The barrage of comments didn't know I had been reborn, and I wasn't the only one who had come back. From the moment I saw my brother and Shen Lingmo just now, I understood that they had also been reborn, and the fact that they never once glanced in my direction made me realize that, even if they knew Jiu Jiao was an imposter, they would still choose to let the mistake stand. After all, in their previous life, it was because of Jiu Jiao. They hate me to the bone. Even more, they sighed before my death. If they could live another life, they would never bring me back. And the life of loneliness and suffering I endured in my previous life, abandoned by them, I no longer wish to taste. Therefore, I do not want to expose Jiu Jiao, nor do I want to have any further connection with them. Just as the group that had received the pastries turned to leave, I suppressed the dull ache in my chest, tightened my grip on the oiled paper, and prepared to return to work in the fields. But the moment I stood up, the red cord around my neck holding the jade pendant suddenly snapped. As the mutton-fat jade pendant fell onto the bluestone pavement, a clear, crisp sound rang out, accompanied by a cold, male voice. That was the personal jade pendant my mother left for my sister, too. I froze all over, my blood seeming to instantly solidify in my veins, and even my breathing became somewhat labored. As I slowly lifted my head, I met Jiu Qingsha's suddenly darkening gaze. He had already strode forward at some point, bending down to pick up the jade pendant, when his fingertip brushed over the engraved character Jiu. A hint of warmth flickered in his eyes. Chapter 2. Suddenly, I remembered the gentle, almost doting look in my brother's eyes when he first recognized me in my previous life. He saw the jade pendant. He's finally going to acknowledge their relationship. Our dear sister has finally found happiness after all the suffering. Jiu Qingsha. Quickly take your sister away. Don't let that fake young lady overstep her bounds. Hearing this, I couldn't help but clutch the hem of my clothes. A mix of bitterness and faint hope surged within me. Suddenly, I thought, perhaps my brother's words in our past life shouldn't have brought me back, were just spoken in anger. This time, he would still take me home, But this glimmer of hope was shattered as soon as it emerged, as he glanced at Jiyu Zhao's pale face beside him. Jiyu Qingsha tightened his grip on the jade pendant and slapped me hard. When half of my face went numb and lost all sensation, his voice was as cold as ice. "How dare you steal something that belongs to my sister? If I hadn't run into you today, would you have claimed this jade pendant as your own and kept pestering me?" His gaze sharpened as he turned and tossed the jade pendant to Jiyu Zhao, his eyes filled with gentle affection. "Zhao Zhao, keep the pendant safe so it won't be stolen by someone with ill intentions again." The abrupt shift from cold harshness to tender warmth felt like an ice pick stabbing straight into my heart. The barrage exploded. "Jiyu Qingsha, are you crazy? That's your own sister. You fool, you're going to regret this sooner or later." Ming, I didn't want to cry, but as I looked at their comfort, tears uncontrollably fell, when the blood from the corner of my mouth dripped onto the chilblain on my hand. The sting spread along my nerves, forcing my fingertips to tremble. They said Jiyu Qingsha was foolish, that he couldn't recognize his own sister, that he would regret it sooner or later. But only I knew he wasn't foolish, he knew everything, and he would never regret it, because everything from my past life surged before my eyes. When Jiyu Qingsha and Shenlingmo arrived, I still didn't know that I was the person they were looking for, in the courtyard, along with all the other girls of the right age. I had red-rimmed eyes, secretly fantasizing that I was the lost young lady they had come to find. After all, in this orphanage, everyone's extravagant hope is to have a home. But in the end, the headmistress led her favorite, Jiyu Zhao, to the two of them. The moment she, fair and clean, threw herself into my brother's arms, my eyes turned red with envy, and when the barrage of comments frantically scrolled, saying that I was the true daughter of the general's mansion, I mustered the courage to rush forward. He took out the jade pendant and exposed her deception. After confirming the jade pendant was genuine, my elder brother used a clean handkerchief to wipe the dust from my face. Coldly brushing aside Jiyu Zhao's attempt to explain, he shielded me in his embrace. His eyes filled with heartache. The words "I'll take you home, little sister" made tears stream down my face. For the next 3 years, I truly had a home, just as the comments said. My brother, being a general, was cold and resolute from a young age, yet he was uniquely gentle with me. He would remember my favorite Osmanthus cakes and stand up for me whenever I felt wronged, and Shenlingmo, as my fiancé, was even more gentle and considerate. On our wedding day, he held my hand and swore before our ancestors' memorial tablets that he would never take a concubine in this lifetime. But that happiness shattered all too soon, on the day I suffered a difficult childbirth. Shenlingmo brought Jiyu Zhao home. Kneeling by my bedside, he said he wanted to take Jiyu Zhao as his concubine. When my elder brother found out, he immediately drew his sword and wounded him, then grabbed Jiyu Zhao and was about to send her to a manor 1,000 miles away, so she could never disturb my life again. But half a month later, Jiyu Zhao returned. My elder brother had also changed. He said Jiyu Zhao was pitiful and wanted to take her in as his adopted sister, even urging me to agree to Shenlingmo marrying her as a secondary wife. Jiyu Zhao stood behind him, his eyes full of defiance. Chapter 3. Looking at these two people who once protected me like treasures, I could only feel absurd and heartbroken. So, supporting my weak body, I slapped Jiyu Zhao hard. Afterwards, I crashed the family recognition banquet they held for Jiyu Zhao and also destroyed the betrothal gifts Shenlingmo had prepared for her. Heartbroken, Jiyu Zhao shut herself indoors and refused to come out. The next day, she was discovered dead from poisoning. All the evidence pointed to me, and she left a farewell letter, which made Jiyu Qingsha and Shenlingmo even more convinced. It was my venomous heart that couldn't tolerate Jiyu Zhao. They didn't do anything to me, they just never looked at me again. Afterwards, Shenlingmo shaved his head and became a monk, residing in a temple outside the city. My elder brother requested to be stationed at the border and refused to see me again. For the remaining 30 years, I raised the child alone and managed the household affairs, enduring from youth until my hair turned white. On my deathbed, they finally came back to see me, but in my days, I clearly heard my brother's voice filled with endless regret. If only we had let the mistake be and never brought you back. Shenlingmo didn't speak, but that heavy sigh struck me like a knife, hitting me hard. That day, I died with resentment in my heart, yet I was reborn on the very day they came to the orphanage to pick someone up. Knowing they would choose Jiyu Jiao, I clutched the jade pendant tightly, just wanting to quietly wait until my coming-of-age ceremony a month later to leave this place. From then on, find a small town where no one knows me and live alone. This time, I don't want to expose Jiyu Jiao again, nor do I want that home that has caused me half a lifetime of pain. But I never expected that it would all happen just because the red string broke. My elder brother snatched the jade pendant left by our mother right in front of everyone. He even gave me a resounding slap across the face. 3. The cold wind of the 12th lunar month was like a knife, stinging my cheeks. As the story took a turn, the barrage of comments began to scatter. When the drop of blood from my lips fell onto the bluestone, the dark red stain spread across the snow. It looked just like the tear that trickled from the corner of my eye in my previous life, when I died with resentment in my heart. As the pain in my chest grew numb, the headmistress grabbed my hair with her rough hands. Shameless creature, you stole Miss Jiaojiao's jade pendant and still dare to talk back. Today, I'm going to break your legs and throw you into the backyard to chop wood. The palm strike landed again, and I trembled all over in pain, yet I still obediently followed her away. But Jiyu Jiao suddenly stepped forward. She was draped in a luxurious fox fur cloak, her eyes brimming with pride. Auntie, please don't be angry. Sister Jinyu was just momentarily confused and wanted a better life. Since the jade pendant has been found, please don't hit her anymore. As she spoke, she reached out and brushed over my frost-bitten, purplish hand, her eyes filled with pity. In the orphanage, Sister Jinyu always shared her steamed bun with me. I remember her kindness, so I also wish for her to live well. She smiled at me, then turned to look at the two men by the carriage, her voice soft as cotton. Brother, Lord Shen, may I take my sister away? After all, even being a maid in the general's manor is better than suffering from cold and hunger here. Hearing this, Jiyu Qingsha instinctively frowned, but seeing the pleading look in Jiyu Jiao's eyes, his tone eventually softened a little. Shen Lingmore had no choice but to nod in agreement. If Jiao Jiao asks, how could we not comply? Jiyu Jiao beamed with joy, but I suddenly looked up, my throat emitting a choked sound. I refuse. I don't want to leave with them. But the next moment, my collar is grabbed from behind. My brother's fingers also press on the acupoint at the side of my neck. Chapter 4. As numbness spreads throughout my body, I can no longer make a single sound. If it weren't for Jiao Jiao's kindness, you should have been beaten to death long ago. Don't be ungrateful when given face. After coldly throwing me to the guards, the man turned and walked toward Jiyu Jiao. As I was forced into the carriage, I caught a glimpse through the falling curtain of my elder brother gently helping Jiyu Jiao into her carriage. The carriage jolted and bumped along the way, with my throat parched and voice silenced. I could only watch helplessly as Jiyu Jiao and my elder brother chatted and laughed, sending chills down to the depths of my heart. I knew that Jiyu Jiao brought me back not out of pity for me. And sure enough, from the moment I entered the residence, her bullying never ceased. In just half a month, she repeatedly overturned scalding tea on purpose. Watching as my hands blistered from the burns, it was even more malicious, making me kneel in the snow until dawn. My brother and Shen Lingmore always turned a blind eye. During this period, Shen Lingmore gave Jiyu Jiao a gift. That entire box of South Sea pearls was 3 times more valuable than the betrothal gifts he had offered me in my previous life. I watched as Shen Lingmore personally placed the jade hairpin into Jiyu Jiao's hair, his gaze as tender as if he were drowning, but when he turned and saw me sweeping the floor under the corridor, he didn't even spare me a glance. My brother cherished Jiyu Jiao as if she were the apple of his eye. He personally taught her swordsmanship for self-defense, and even had a silver hand warmer specially made for her. Fearing she might get cold, on her birthday, the two of them held a grand banquet at the mansion, inviting all the nobles in the capital. My brother publicly announced, Jiyu Jiao is the long-lost eldest daughter of the general's mansion, the person he, Jiyu Qingsha, would protect with his life, but he forgot that I am his biological sister. Now, at the banquet, cups and goblets clinked together, and the guests' congratulations rose and fell in waves. Meanwhile, I was dragged by the maid beside Jiyu Jiao and forced to kneel on the stone steps outside the banquet hall, serving as a human footstool. as the servant in embroidered boots stepped on my back to ascend and descend the steps. The wounds on my back, inflicted by Jiyu Zhao's cane, felt as though they were being torn open. My face pale, I gritted my teeth tightly. But because of the mute acupoint my elder brother had pressed, I couldn't even let out a single groan. When tears fill my eyes, I don't want to see their warmth, yet memories of my brother in a past life holding my hand at a banquet, vowing to protect me forever, along with Shen Lingmore's promises, kept flashing before my eyes. Everything they once gave to me, they now give entirely to Jiyu Zhao. As the cold wind swept snowflakes onto my eyelashes, I suddenly smiled. Snow mixed with tears slid into my mouth, salty and cold. I told myself there was really nothing to be sad about, yet the place where my heart is still felt as if frozen, dully aching, for I thought I would once again shed tears without any pride, just like every time before when I saw them ignore me for Jiyu Zhao. But at this moment, I realized my eyes were so dry that not a single tear could fall, and after all the guests had entered the mansion, I could finally stand up. The wind, carrying snow, blew into my collar as I supported my frozen, stiff knees and shakily rose from the icy stone steps. The sound of music and laughter from the banquet hall felt like needles dipped in ice, stinging my ears. I tried my best to keep my gaze straight ahead, yet the chill I had accumulated earlier, when I was used as a human footstool, seeped deep into the crevices of my bones. As the pain spread, I dragged my leaden legs toward the backyard kitchen. At this moment, it was mealtime. But when I pushed the door open, I saw the stove was cold, and the wooden rice bucket was completely empty. I told you so. The meal today is prepared for the distinguished guests attending the banquet, and there's no share for you. Why are you even here? Chapter 5. Aunt Zhong, who was in charge of tending the fire, glanced at me sideways with a mocking smile at the corner of her mouth, but the bowl of rice she held in her hands made my lower abdomen cramp with pain. I wanted to argue. But another maid came over holding a half-full chamber pot, covering her nose. As the pungent, sour stench hit me, I instinctively stepped back, but the servant boy firmly pressed down on my shoulders. Warm filth poured over me, and my vision instantly blurred. She actually thought the young lady brought her back to provide her with food and warm clothes. But who doesn't know that the young lady isn't kind-hearted? She just wants to make her life even more difficult. Moreover, the young lady has ordered that as long as we torment her half to death every day, the rewards will be plentiful. The servants laughed recklessly and without restraint, but in just a moment, their laughter abruptly ceased, because my elder brother and Shen Lingmore had appeared. The black and moon-white brocade robes were particularly eye-catching in the dimly lit kitchen. At this moment, Jiyu Qingshi's face was ashen, after taking in my disheveled appearance. He cast an icy gaze toward the maid who had thrown the filthy water at me. Take her away and beat her to death. In an instant, the maid was so terrified that she fell to her knees with a thud. Jiyu Zhao, who had arrived at some point without anyone noticing, grabbed the man's sleeve with red-rimmed eyes. Brother, it's my fault. I didn't manage the servants properly. Please don't blame them. When she turned to look at me, her eyes were filled with guilt. Yet an unmistakable sense of pride was hidden beneath them. Sister Jinyu, I'm sorry. It's all my fault for not giving proper instructions earlier and making you suffer. Hearing this, the two men glanced at me briefly before finally turning away. Since Jiao Jiao has pleaded for you, I, the general, will spare you this time. Seeing this, Jiyu Zhao wiped away her tears and smiled, while the maid, even more smugly, stood up to apologize, though not sincerely. I'm sorry, Jinyu. I'll take you to wash up right away. As I was forcibly turned around, I couldn't help but look back. Then I saw my brother brushing the snowflakes from the hem of Jiyu Zhao's skirt, and Shen Lingmore quickly handed over a hand warmer. In an instant, I averted my gaze and suppressed the trembling throughout my body. I understand that they are aware of Jiyu Zhao's intentions. They simply don't care about me. But perhaps that's for the best. I, too, have long stopped caring. After washing up, I was finally able to rest for a moment on the haystack in the firewood shed, but as soon as I closed my eyes, urgent shouts from the maid came from outside the door. What are you still standing there for after washing up? The young lady wants you to go to the front courtyard and serve tea to the distinguished guests. When I suddenly opened my eyes, I remembered that at a banquet in my previous life, Princeton had publicly declared his love at first sight for me and later repeatedly tried to take me away. Thinking this might be an opportunity to escape the general's manor, my heart raced with excitement. I wanted to leave, even if it meant seducing someone. Clutching the teapot in my hand, I took a deep breath and walked step by step toward the noisy banquet hall. As my gaze swept over the banquet, I quickly locked onto the Duke of N sitting in the corner. The man was dressed in a sapphire blue brocade robe, idly toying with a wine glass, holding the teapot. My fingertips trembled slightly from nervousness. The next moment, I walked straight toward him. As if sensing something, the man suddenly grabbed my wrist just as I was about to reach for the tea in front of him. "You're quite a beauty, girl. How about following this prince?" As soon as these words were spoken, the hall instantly fell silent. When everyone's gaze turned over, Shen Lingmore's fingers gripping the wine glass suddenly tightened. My brother's face changed abruptly. "No." But I didn't look at them. Only when I raised my eyes to meet Princeton's gaze did I use all my strength to clearly respond. "Alright." Chapter 6, 5. And at the moment the word good fell, the air in the banquet hall seemed to freeze. Jiyu Qingsha even stood up abruptly and strode over. The dark brocade robe swept past the table in front, causing the cups and saucers to collide with a crisp sound. When he grabbed my wrist, the man's strength was so great it felt as if he were about to crush my bones. Those usually cold eyes were now burning with rage. "How can you be so shameless?" The roar echoed in my ears, and I winced in pain. When he met Jiyu Qingsha's gaze, the disappointment and frustration in his eyes were almost overflowing. "Do you know what kind of person Princeton is? Everyone in the capital knows he is a womanizer. None of the women he's been with have lasted more than 7 days. Even if he takes a fancy to you, at most he'll only make you a concubine. Are you really willing to degrade yourself and follow him?" He stared at me intently, as if my agreement would mean I had no self-respect and deserved the worst condemnation. But for me, being a concubine is still better than suffering humiliation here. Moreover, in the general's mansion, I was a servant girl who could be beaten and scolded at will, a lowly wretch who had filth poured over my head, a pitiful creature who couldn't even get a full meal. To become a prince's concubine, with warm clothes and full meals, would be the best possible outcome. So, I am willing. I wanted to break free from his grip, but Shen Lingmore, who had been silent all along, could no longer hold back. "Jiyu Jinyu." He stared at me, his eyes bloodshot, his chest beneath the moon-white robe heaved violently. Jiyu Qingsha was so furious that the veins on his temples throbbed. For a moment, he wanted to tell me that I was the true young lady of the general's manor, and scold me for degrading myself like this. But just then, a voice choked with tears interrupted everything. "Brother." Jiyu Jiao ran down from the main seat and grabbed his sleeve. Tears fell like pearls from a broken string. "Today is my family recognition banquet. Let's not spoil everyone's mood over such a small matter. Alright, since Sister Jinyu has made her decision, let her do as she wishes." As she spoke, she didn't forget to glance at Shen Lingmore, her eyes filled with grievance. In an instant, the two men snapped back to reality. Jiyu Qingsha looked at Jiyu Jiao's reddened eyes, his tightly clenched hand suddenly loosened, the anger on his face replaced by coldness. Shen Lingmore also reined in his emotions and slowly sat back in his seat, yet the fingers gripping the wine glass remained pale at this moment. They finally remembered that today's grand feast was meant to announce to everyone that Jiyu Jiao is the eldest daughter of the general's manor, not to vent anger on a maidservant like me. So, Jiyu Qingsha tossed out a "do as you please" and strode back to the main seat. Princeton was publicly called a libertine, yet he didn't mind at all. When he reached out and pulled me into his embrace, he took a piece of Osmanthus cake from his sleeve and, without a word, stuffed it into my mouth. "Look how thin you are. Eat more good food." As the sweet fragrance spread across my tongue, I suddenly realized that I had long been starving due to Jiyu Jiao's deliberate withholding of meals. In my past life, I detested promiscuous people the most, but at this moment, looking at the smiling eyes of Princeton, my own eyes were filled with tears. In a daze, I remembered that in my past life, I only learned after death that Princeton had remained unmarried his entire life for my sake. He had even knelt in front of the general's mansion after my death, begging Jiyu Qingsha to let him bury my remains. As my throat tightened, I wolfed down the pastries, tears mixing with the crumbs as they fell. Chapter 7. The banquet continued, and the guests quickly put the earlier incident behind them, their words filled with congratulations for Jiyu Jiao. Only Jiyu Qingsha and Shen Lingmo, seated at the main table, kept glancing at me. Finally, as the guests dispersed, I followed Prince An out the gate of the general's residence, but the moment my fingertips touched the carriage curtain, my wrist was suddenly grabbed from behind. 6. When I turned to look, two figures stood in the snow. Jiyu Qingsha's black cloak was covered in snow, and the snowflakes clinging to his temples had melted into droplets from his anxiety. Shen Lingmo also shed his composure from the banquet, his eyes swirling with complex, hard-to-discern emotions. Instinctively, I looked behind them. But I didn't see Jiyu Jiao. It seemed they had deliberately kept her at the residence, fearing that seeing this scene would break her heart. At this moment, looking at the solemn expressions on their faces, a mocking smile curled at the corner of my lips. Does the general still intend to stop me? I tried to pull my wrist free from Jiyu Qingsha's grip with force, but he suddenly tightened his hold, his knuckles turning white from the strain, as a sharp, bone-chilling pain shot through my wrist. I couldn't help but frown, her eyes even reddened from days of grievances and the current suffocation. Must you make things difficult for a lowly maid like me? Jiyu Qingsha's body stiffened, and the grip on my wrist loosened slightly. You actually know that you are my real sister, don't you? He looked at me, the guilt in his eyes almost overflowing. From the day at the orphanage when he saw that the innocence from our first meeting in the previous life was gone from my gaze. He had guessed that I had been reborn, but Jiyu Jiao's death in the previous life became a thorn in his and Shen Lingmo's hearts. So in this life, when Jiyu Jiao bullied me relentlessly, they chose to turn a blind eye. They wanted to teach me a lesson, to make me remember the harm I had done to Jiyu Jiao. But they never expected that I would rather become someone's concubine than stay in the general's residence. At this moment, he stepped forward, his voice carrying an indescribable hoarseness. Don't degrade yourself. In a few days, I will announce to the world that I am taking you as my sworn sister. This time, both you and Jiao Jiao are my sisters, and I will protect both of you. Shen Lingmo also stepped forward, his usually cold voice carrying a trace of barely noticeable panic. I can also marry you as my equal wife. They stood in the snow, their promises like charity. They thought I would be overjoyed, but now, I only find it laughable. Long ago, in their previous lives, they let me die with resentment for Jiyu Jiao's sake, and in this life, they stood by and watched as Jiyu Jiao drenched me with filthy water, made me a human stepping stone, and refused to even give me a full meal. I was pushed into the abyss by their own hands. I no longer care for these so-called good intentions. At this moment, I kept a cold expression with lowered eyes, my voice calm and devoid of any emotion. You flatter me, Prime Minister and General. I am merely a lowly servant who steals and was cast out of the orphanage. How could I possibly deserve such kindness from the two of you? I deliberately emphasized the word Chancellor to remind Shen Lingmo of his current status, and to let them know there are already countless mountains and rivers between us. Moreover, I raised my eyes toward the direction of Prince An, my tone deliberately tinged with a hint of tenderness. I have long admired the prince. To become his concubine is something I am willing and eager to do. Chapter 8. Both of you should please return now, lest you linger here and cause Miss Jiao Jiao distress. In an instant, Jiyu Qingsha and Shen Lingmo were both frozen in place. Their lips moved slightly as if they still wanted to say something. The gentle voice of Prince An calling Jinyu came over. I immediately turned around and walked quickly toward his outstretched hand. The moment my hand was firmly grasped, the warmth from his palm dispelled the chill in my fingertips. It also dispelled the last trace of nostalgia for the past in my heart. I didn't look back at the two people behind me, only lowering the carriage curtain as I stepped onto the carriage through the snow, completely shutting out those two figures standing rigidly in the snow. 7. The carriage rolled over the snow, quickly leaving Jiyu Qingsha and Shen Lingmo far behind. Seeing this, Jiyu Qingsha clenched his fists, his body beneath the black cloak tensing straight. Shen Lingmo instinctively took a step to chase after them, but was abruptly pulled back by his wrist. She doesn't appreciate it, so let her be. His voice was as cold as ice. Yet there was a trace of panic in his eyes that even he hadn't noticed, but he still forced himself to calm down. After all, in this lifetime, We are here to make amends for Jiao Jiao. Why should we lose our composure because of her? Shen Lingmore's footsteps faltered, and a bitter taste rose in his throat as he watched the carriage disappear into the distance. Yet when his moon-white robe was covered in snow, he finally withdrew his gaze. Brother Jiyu is right, it's for the best that she's gone. Even so, neither of them turned to leave. My heart felt as if something was blocking it, aching with a bitter soreness. It wasn't until the carriage had completely disappeared at the end of the street, turning into a small black dot, that they stepped on the snow and silently made their way back to the general's residence. Their figures were stretched exceptionally long in the snow, yet, after the carriage had moved far away, the atmosphere grew somewhat stagnant. I huddled in the corner, my fingers tightly clutching the hem of my clothes, my palms sweating with nervousness. The Prince of An leaned back on the soft cushion, watching me with great interest. With a playful smile curling at the corner of his lips, he suddenly patted his leg and said, "Come sit here." My heart sank heavily. Sure enough, the rumors were true. This prince is known for his romantic escapades. He probably really sees me as a plaything to be toyed with at will. But then again, since he's willing to take me away from the general's manor, I should be prepared to pay some price. Trading 7 days with him for my freedom is worth it. After all, without the status of the general's daughter, how can I expect him to treat me with sincerity? So, I took a deep breath and suppressed the ache in my heart. As I slowly moved over, I stiffly sat on his lap. Remembering the rumors about his indulgence in the carriage, I gritted my teeth and reached to remove my clothes. But just as my fingertips touched the knot of my collar, my wrist was grabbed. I looked up in a daze, only to see the Prince of An with his ears tinged red, his usually smiling eyes now filled with panic. Even his speech was somewhat stammering. You can't do this. We have to wait until we're married for such things. You want to marry me?" I couldn't believe my ears and widened my eyes in disbelief. Yet he nodded firmly, his gaze unusually serious. Then, as if remembering something, he suddenly raised his hand and untied his brocade robe, removing the upper part of his clothing. Moonlight streamed through the gaps in the carriage curtain, illuminating his toned waist and well-defined abdominal muscles, and on his arm, a bright red cinnabar mole was particularly striking. Chapter 9. My vision suddenly went black, and my heart began to race wildly. Because the former princess's consort was secretly promiscuous, it caused the royal family to lose face. In his fury, the late emperor decreed that all royal descendants, regardless of gender, must have a cinnabar mark applied to their arms at birth to verify their purity. But how could the Prince of An, known for his frivolous and dissolute ways, possibly be pure? As if seeing through my doubts, he seemed a bit embarrassed. Yet his voice was deep and earnest. The Grand Princess's household once held overwhelming power. While my uncle was alive, he always feared my mother's clan. If I hadn't pretended to be a frivolous and dissipated playboy, I would have long been seen as a thorn in their side, and my life would have been in danger. As he spoke, he looked up at me, his eyes filled with sincerity. "But I like you. I've liked you since the first time I saw you at the banquet in our previous life. Now, by being like this, I don't want you to misunderstand me, and I especially don't want you to think that taking you away was just a whim. Now that the new emperor has ascended the throne, as a royalist, I no longer need to pretend, and when I said I wanted to marry you, I meant it sincerely." Hearing the words previous life, my heart was stirred. Memories of my past life after death, becoming a spirit and seeing him remain unmarried his whole life, kneeling and begging for my remains, flooded my heart like a tide. So, I looked into his earnest eyes and, as if bewitched, gave a slight nod. "But I want a pre-written divorce agreement. If one day he betrays me, I can leave cleanly, without repeating the mistakes of my past life." Hearing this, Prince An chuckled and ruffled my hair. "I will give you peace of mind, but I will never give you the chance to leave me." As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately picked up pen and paper, wrote the divorce agreement without hesitation, and placed it in my hand. At the same time, the carriage arrived at the princess's residence, and the snow had stopped falling. The silver glow of the bright moon shone upon the vermilion gates, dispelling the winter's chill. Holding the divorce decree in my hand, I understood that the pain and grievances that had entangled me for 2 lifetimes were finally coming to an end, and I was about to embrace a true new beginning. The night was deep, the general's residence was completely silent, Jiyu Qingsha and Shen Lingmo sat in silence in the study. And even the tea in front of them had long gone cold. Suddenly, the hidden guard who had been secretly investigating potential dangers appeared in the room without a sound. He knelt on one knee, his tone cold and calm. I have discovered that Jiyu Jiao has been secretly colluding with the remnants of the rebel Prince Duan's faction, and recently she has been probing for confidential information from the study of our residence and the Prime Minister's residence. 8. Moreover, Jiyu Jiao's identity is fake. She is not the long-lost daughter of the general's manor. In the instant the air in the study froze, Jiyu Qingsha tightly clenched the celadon teacup in his hand. When the cup made a faint sound against the wall, his eyes were filled with shock and lingering fear. Along with it, his hands trembled slightly. Shen Lingmo also abruptly stood up, his expression as grave as if covered by a layer of frost. They had long known that Jiyu Jiao was not the true daughter of the general's mansion, yet they could not accept that the girl from their past life, so kind and pitiful that she had made them feel guilty for a lifetime, could have been a scheming spy with ulterior motives. Jiyu Qingsha's Adam's apple moved, his voice carrying suppressed anger. Why didn't you report this earlier? The shadow guard froze for a moment, then lowered his head. I only managed to thoroughly investigate this half an hour ago. Upon hearing this, the two of them were suddenly stunned. Memories surged like a tidal wave. They suddenly remembered that in their previous life, after bringing me back, Jiyu Qingsha had assigned both of the only two imperial guards bestowed by His Majesty to protect me. Chapter 10. Because they had to protect me closely without leaving my side, the hidden guards had no time to investigate the backgrounds of others in the mansion. But in this life, they were fully committed to making amends for Jiyu Jiao and did not assign the hidden guards to me, who had been wronged. Therefore, the hidden guards were able to focus on identifying potential threats and uncovered this hidden danger. They knew well that the shadow guards always handled matters with meticulous care, and the information they uncovered would never be false. Yet, the lingering obsession in their hearts about past life affection made them reluctant to accept the reality. Thus, Jiyu Qingsha waved his hand and said sternly, investigate again, make sure to verify every detail thoroughly, leaving no room for the slightest error. Shen Lingmo remained silent in agreement, his fingers unconsciously rubbing the edge of the table, his heart as heavy as if weighed down by a massive rock. After the secret guard left, Jiyu Jiao sent someone to invite them to accompany her for a stroll outside the mansion. In the past, the two would have agreed without hesitation, but now, thinking of the news brought by the secret guard, they refused. Upon receiving the reply, a flicker of unwillingness flashed in Jiyu Jiao's eyes, but it was quickly concealed. After dismissing the accompanying maid with an excuse, she slipped out of the general's mansion alone. She walked into a secluded tavern with familiarity, unaware that a shadowy figure was following her like a ghost, listening in on every word of her conversation with the person in the private room. Late in the night, Jiyu Jiao returned to the mansion with a triumphant smile. Almost at the same time, the secret guard appeared in the study. This time, he did not dictate, but instead placed a stack of letters and secret messages in front of the two. Master, the evidence is conclusive. Upon hearing this, Jiyu Qingsha trembled as he picked up the secret message, his pupils suddenly contracting. Are you saying that my aunt already knows I've recognized a fake sister and has even set off for the capital? And Jiyu Jiao, afraid of being exposed, personally suggested to Prince Duan to first take Brother Shun to the temple under the pretense of praying for blessings, then take the opportunity to drug him and force the relationship, and even deliberately arranged an assassination attempt for me so she could take the sword for me. The man's face was grim, his voice so hoarse it was unpleasant to hear. How he wished to hear that this wasn't true, yet the guard nodded and said, yes. She had accurately gauged the temperaments of the two masters. She knew that even if she was a fake daughter, you two would protect her fiercely because of this favor. At that time, she would be able to legitimately infiltrate the general's manor and the prime minister's residence, steal military and political intelligence, and pave the way for Prince Duan's restoration. After hearing everything clearly, Shen Lingmo clenched his fist abruptly. Memories from his past life also flooded his mind. He recalled that the reason he had insisted on taking Jiyu Jiao as his equal wife back then was precisely because he had been afflicted with a love poison in the temple and was nearly ensnared in a scheme. It was Jiyu Jiao who timely appeared to take him away and sacrificed herself to detoxify him. Feeling guilty for ruining her purity, he had shown her favor and leniency in every matter, even when his own wife shed tears of sorrow over this. It did not shake him in the slightest, and Jiyu Qingsha also recalled the entanglements of his past life. He had originally intended to drive away Jiyu Jiao, who was trying to disrupt his sister's marriage, but because Jiyu Jiao took a sword for him during an assassination attempt, he felt a sense of guilt. Not only did he adopt her as his sworn sister, but he even forced Jinyu, while she was weak after childbirth, to magnanimously accept Jiyu Jiao as a co-wife. Yet even with the evidence laid out before them, they still held on to a sliver of resistance. Wait and see. However, early the next morning, Jiyu Jiao sent someone over. Chapter 11. She said she had been feeling unsettled lately and wanted to invite the two of them to go to a temple in the suburbs to pray for blessings. Meanwhile, the secret guards also sent a message, informing them that there would be an assassination attempt targeting Jiyu Qingsha in the suburbs today. At this moment, Shen Lingmo and Jiyu Qingsha could no longer deceive themselves. In that instant, a chilling coldness swept through their hearts. Their hearts felt as if drenched by the icy water of a bitter winter. Even their breath carried a piercing pain. 9. She was really using us, Jiyu Qingsha muttered to himself. The secret letter in his fingertips almost crushed. Shen Lingmo stood aside, his face as pale as paper. The overlapping evidence from past and present lives forced them to admit the truth. Their so-called guilt and attempts at redemption across 2 lifetimes were, from beginning to end, an elaborately orchestrated deception. Just as the two were drowning in remorse, a servant hurriedly brought in a gilded wedding invitation, his voice tinged with panic. General, Prime Minister, the Prince of an Commandery has sent an invitation stating that he has found his true love and is holding the wedding banquet today, inviting both of you to attend the ceremony, today. Jiyu Qingsha suddenly looked up, his heart sinking, as the scene of me following the Prince of an Commandery away yesterday surfaced. Shen Lingmo snatched the wedding invitation. As his trembling fingers unfolded it, he saw the bride's name boldly written in gold on the red background, Jiyu Jinyu. With a sharp thud, the wedding invitation slipped from his hand. No, you can't marry him. His voice was hoarse, and Jiyu Qingsha's expression was even more grim. He is a notorious playboy. How could he ever be worthy of my sister, Jiyu Qingsha? With that, he strode out the door. As his black cloak fluttered behind him, Shen Lingmo followed closely. Without even taking the time to straighten their court robes, the two mounted their horses and headed straight for the Anjuan prince's residence. The biting wind stung their cheeks as they raced forward at full speed, yet they dared not stop, their hearts filled with even greater anxiety and regret. They hated themselves for failing to keep me yesterday, hated being deceived by Jiyu Jiao, and hated realizing the truth too late. Now, the last trace of guilt they felt toward Jiyu Jiao had completely vanished. All that remains is guilt and remorse. When the gate was pulled open, the prince's mansion was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. And red silk seemed to cover the sky. I sat in front of the dressing table, being made up by the maid. As I looked at the woman in the mirror, whose eyes and brows had shed their former timidity and melancholy, I felt a growing sense of calm within me. But the door was suddenly forced open, and Jiyu Qingsha and Shen Lingmo burst in. The moment our eyes met, I saw their disheveled clothes and hair dusted with dirt. Shen Lingmo spoke, his voice trembling. When his gaze fell upon the bright red wedding dress I was wearing, my heart ached as if pricked by needles. The affectionate Yua was the call I cherished most in my past life. But hearing it now, my heart remained unmoved. She then turned her head slowly, gently pursed her lips, completing the final step of her makeup. Seeing this, Jiyu Qingsha stepped forward, pushed aside the woman who was about to place the bridal veil over my head, and sternly dismissed all the servants. When only the 3 of us remained in the room, his grip on my wrist began to tremble slightly. Come back with your brother. The Prince of An is not a good match for you, he doesn't deserve you. Shen Lingmo also stepped forward, his eyes filled with eagerness and regret. His voice even carried a tone of pleading. I was wrong. In my past life, I shouldn't have been deceived by Jiyu Jiao, nor should I have been so cold to you. Chapter 12. Jiyu Jiao was a spy for the Prince of Duan. Everything in our past life was her scheme. You were not wrong to have killed her back then. I will not marry Jiyu Jiao anymore. The only one I love is you. As he spoke, he reached out to touch my cheek, but when I dodged to the side, his heart felt icy cold, yet he still forced a bitter smile and apologized. In my past life, I shouldn't have become a monk out of so-called guilt, nor should I have let you live out your life all alone. This time, I won't make the same mistake. For the rest of my life, I will only stay by your side, watching you and our child grow up. Is that all right? Jiyu Qingsha looked at me, recalling how emaciated and much older than my peers I had looked before my death in my previous life. Only now did he feel the pain. His voice couldn't help but grow hoarse. Are you? It's your brother who failed you. In the past, I was blind, my heart clouded by confusion. From now on, I won't favor Jiyu Jiao anymore, and I won't let you suffer any grievances. Please come back with us, okay? They spoke words of belated repentance and promises, trying to pull me away from this wedding, to set everything back on the right track, but I just looked at them coldly, as familiar bullet comments floated before my eyes. Sis, don't listen to them. These two fools caused you so much suffering in your past life. What does their regret matter now? That's right. The prince truly cares for you. In your past life, he guarded you for a lifetime. You mustn't go back with these two scoundrels. They said they were pulled back to their past lives when the plot deviated. They also saw the outcome of my past life. Now that the two of them are here to take me home, they have reappeared, even advising me not to look back. Seeing this, warmth rose in my eyes, and I said to the barrage of comments, "Thank you." However, this faint sound fell upon Jiyu Qingsha and Shen Lingmo's ears, making them think I had softened my stance. But I only stood up and walked to the door, personally picking up the red bridal veil from the table and slowly placing it over my own head. When my expression was hidden, I said, "I am not your Yua. The Jiyu Jinyu of the past died long ago, when they repeatedly favored Jiyu Jiao. Moreover, today is my wedding day. Please have some self-respect and do not ruin my special day." 10. The words fell. I turned, holding onto the doorframe, and walked step by step toward the front hall. In the bridal chamber behind me, Jiyu Qingsha and Shen Lingmo stood frozen in place, their figures in black and moonwhite starkly conspicuous amidst the sea of celebratory red. Scattered breaths are filled with regret. They couldn't help but blame themselves and feel sorrow, unaware of how long they had been standing there in a daze. It wasn't until the MC's loud announcement echoed from the front hall that they snapped out of their trance. The moment they snapped back to reality, they rushed out the door like madmen, desperate to stop the wedding. But as soon as they stepped into the courtyard, they were blocked by a team of dark-clad shadow guards. Knowing they would cause trouble, Princeton had made preparations in advance, and these before them were the shadow guards of the princess's estate. Although Jiyu Qingsha was a general who fought on the battlefield, and Shen Lingmo also possessed martial arts skills, at this moment they were unable to withstand the encirclement of dozens of experts. When the long sword forged from black iron was held horizontally in front of them, the two were firmly blocked at the entrance of the garden. They could only watch helplessly from the inner pavilion as Iron Prince and completed the 3 bows of the wedding ceremony amidst the blessings of the guests. As the words "escort to the bridal chamber" were announced, Jiyu Qingsha clenched his fists tightly. Chapter 13. Even as her nails dug deep into her palms, drawing blood, she remained completely unaware. Shen Lingmo trembled all over, the light in his eyes gradually extinguishing until only a deathly stillness remained. Ultimately, the two were escorted out of the Junwang residence by the hidden guards. The wind and snow had unknowingly picked up again, the cold flakes striking their faces. They stood on the stone steps outside the residence gate, looking around in bewilderment. When regret washed over them like a tidal wave, they wanted to rush back inside, but they knew that the girl they had once abandoned would never look back, and at that moment, unfamiliar lines of text suddenly appeared in the air. It was the bullet comments that had once appeared beside Jiyu Jinyu. They knew that because the story had been interrupted, they would soon disappear. Yet, before dissipating, they drifted toward the two of them and left behind words as sharp as needles, dripping with mockery. "Two fools. In her past life, Jiyu Jiao died because the Prince of Duan, resentful that she couldn't obtain the confidential information, deliberately withheld the antidote, letting her succumb to the poison. All of this has absolutely nothing to do with my Bao. You, on the other hand, are so blinded by greed that you let her live a lonely life and die emaciated in a cold courtyard. The handwriting flickered, filled with intense anger. You'd better have some self-awareness and stop bothering Sister Bao. She deserves true happiness. As these words fell, the barrage gradually began to scatter. Jiyu Qingsha and Shen Lingmo staggered, nearly collapsing into the snow, but soon, they trudged back to their residence with heavy steps. No longer thinking of rushing back to the Junwang mansion, and never again mentioning the matter of reclaiming Jiyu Jinyu, at this moment, they finally understood, they truly should no longer use the names of family and lovers. Don't disturb her hard-won new life. But they had no intention of letting Jiyu Jiao off. After returning to the general's mansion, the two pretended as if nothing had happened, still showering Jiyu Jiao with endless care, even more indulgent than before. Even if their aunt was dissatisfied upon entering the capital, they gently reassured her and went along with the plan, weaving a dream of exclusive favor for Jiyu Jiao. In secret, they had already joined forces with the hidden guards to collect the secret letters exchanged between Jiyu Jiao and Prince Duan. Tracking down the prince's hiding place, Jiyu Jiao smugly believed she was irreplaceable in their hearts, unaware, those favors she once used as bargaining chips had now become her death warrant. Several months later, the Crown Prince's hideout was exposed. Jiyu Qingsha and Shen Lingmo personally led troops to capture the Crown Prince and his followers in one fell swoop. While the court was in turmoil, the Crown Prince was sentenced to have his family property confiscated and be executed. The two men did not seek credit or rewards, but only numbly requested the emperor to hand Jiyu Jiao over to them for disposal. Deep within the prison, Jiyu Jiao shed her usual fragility. Her face contorted with vicious curses. Jiyu Qingsha and Shen Lingmo watched her, their eyes devoid of any emotion, as they lowered their heads to conceal the darkness in their eyes. Their smiles were sick and deranged. What you owe Jinyu, we will make you repay for a lifetime. They did not let Jiyu Jiao die a swift death. Instead, they stripped her of her status and sent her to the harshest mines to labor as a common slave. They wanted her to endure cold and hunger day and night. Tasting all the suffering Jiyu Jinyu had once endured, for the rest of their lives, Jiyu Qingsha remained the general guarding the frontier, while Shen Lingmo continued as the prime minister assisting in state affairs. However, for the rest of their days, they would watch the commandery prince's residence from afar, spending their lives in remorse and solitude, atoning for their past.